So this video training episode is going to address what one can and can't say or play on KWLP and why. And that includes, nasty words and content, personal attacks, and political comments and opinions. And most of these rules can be found on page 14 through 17 of your KWLP show host staff handbook. The sources for most of the rules are the FCC, and then the community, of course, and the department and stations standards, which are consistent with the department's vision and mission statements and KWLP's mission statement. And that comes from the station being, of course, licensed by the FCC, but owned by the Wallapai Tribe, and being a program of the Wallapai Tribe Health Department. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into consideration when we determine what we can and can't or should and shouldn't put on the air. And I gave you some handouts. I'm not sure you got them all. Doesn't look like Steve got any of them. There's a sign-in sheet over here. I'll have to edit this out. Sign-in sheet over here, and then all the handouts are over here that I'll be referring to. And they have a lot more detail. This is kind of an overview, but go ahead and take a look at the handouts and see if maybe they shed some light on a murky area of broadcasting and the law. Bottom line, err on the side of no. If you have to ask whether it's okay, it's probably not. And even if it technically would be, we don't want to go there. We don't want to have to do any of the, if you do this, then do that come up, okay? So KWLP has to comply with the FCC regulations regarding content, and there's several aspects of that. The FCC bans all broadcast of obscene material at any time. It's actually a criminal offense, and there's a three-pronged test for determining that. Material is defined as obscene if it appeals to prurient interests, depicts or describes sexual conduct in terms that are obviously offensive, and taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or significant value. Okay, so that can't get played anytime, anywhere, for any reason, any standards. Then the FCC bans the broadcast of, that would fall within, if I'm giving an example, child pornography. I don't think anybody questions whether or not that might be okay under some circumstances. FCC bans the broadcast of indecent or explicit material between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. So that means anytime the little kiddos and the grandmas and grandpas might be listening. And that is defined as material that contains language that in context depicts and graphically describes sexual activities in an offensive manner or excretory activities or organs of the human body. So it's banned during one time frame, but it's technically allowed after 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. on stations. That means you can play it. That doesn't mean you have to. And for other reasons I'll talk about later, KWLP does not. And we do wield a lot of questions about, well, I hear that song on this station, why can't we play it on ours? And so there's some reasons for that. Likewise, the FCC bans the broadcast of profane language between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m., again, when little ones and the elderly might be hearing it. And that generally includes language that might be deemed blasphemous by religious persons, swear words that would have obscenity being taken in vain. For instance, you could say damn on the air, but you can't say goddamn, okay? And it extends to language that would include racial or gender-biased slurs or derogatory statements. So a lot of things that might be said in some genres of music with the racial and gender-based biased swear words can't go on the air during the day, according to the FCC, or again, for us, anytime. So the reason for that is twofold. Um, we could play indecent and explicit and profane language and content from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. according to the FCC, but we do not for two reasons. One, our software that we have right now couldn't manage it. Sam has no way, when it's on autopilot and randomly grabbing songs and contents, of knowing whether it's something that can be played at a certain time or not, and it might very likely play it at the wrong time. Despite that, KWL, excuse me, you have to edit that. We were doing that a lot this morning, huh?
Yeah.
There's a blooper. KWLP doesn't air anything like that and more because of community standards, and then the station standards as a program of the health department. We don't air anything that promotes or glorifies alcohol or drug use, and promotes or glorifies is open to interpretation. A mention may not promote or glorify. If there's a question, you'd run it by me, and if I don't clearly have an opinion about it one way or another, I'll run it by the advisory committee if it becomes an issue. We don't play anything that promotes or glorifies violence in any form, and that includes domestic violence, suicide, self-harm, or gang activity. So those kick out a lot of songs in a few genres. We also don't play anything that demeans or degrades anyone because of their sex, race, religious affiliations, gender orientation, that type of thing. We don't depict any sexual activity or anything play anything that's sexually suggestive or has innuendo that might be offensive to some listeners, including children or elders, but just ordinary Joes if they knew what it actually meant. I've had to get the Urban Dictionary out a number of times to figure out, what does this really mean? Or you can actually Google it, what do these lyrics mean? Or, go get some artist information, and, the intent and the meaning and the innuendo matters. So that's another reason why all of our live performances are pre-recorded too. That allows you to not get on the air some goofs that might violate this. Complaints that come in about it go through the chain of command. That's me, and then through the department and council. But of course, people can always file complaints directly with the FCC about those things. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? I would just note that some things do get through because we have an awful lot of music and we have a lot of hands in the pot screening it. So if you're listening and you hear something, do let us know. It helps if, you don't have to know the name of the song. If you just know about what time and day it played, we can check it out and get it pulled. Another thing that's not allowed is personal attacks, defamation, criticism. The FCC, of course, would allow that if the person that's targeted or whatever were given a reasonable opportunity to respond at the station without charge. But we do not want to go there, so just be nice. And again, if you think it might offend somebody, don't go there. We also don't allow any discussion of local politics, community gossip, personal conflicts, personal agendas by broadcasters on the air. That includes targeting the individuals in the community, families, departments and programs, local political candidates, or the station, which happens to be a program. So one of those things, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Don't put us in the position of needing to give equal time and opportunity to respond. We don't allow editorial commentary. The only time that comes in at all on our station would be if one of the Native Voice One programs might give address Native issues, political issues of interest to Native Americans. But then those programs are going to be the ones required to give the equal opportunities to respond, and then we would be airing their response as well. That's not for us to provide that equal opportunity to respond. When political season comes around, we do always have a forum for the political candidates. We decide, and the advisory committee approves certain questions that will be presented to all the tribal council candidates, and they're given the same amount of time to answer them. If they don't utilize the time, that's on them. We do sell advertising though, and that's a different animal altogether. We'll address that in a different scenario. Does anybody have any questions, comments? I played a song that had a naughty word in it on my Friday afternoon show. So obviously an album cut got in the mix somewhere, so we need to remove or edit it and get the radio version. I would add, if there's ways that radio stations get around the FCC's rules. They do radio cuts. They call them, clean radio edit, squeaky clean, super squeaky clean. Sometimes the clean ones, they've just scratched over the words that aren't allowed, but you can still tell exactly what they're saying. We choose not to play those. I'll just wait for the super squeaky clean, or if it's easily cut out and the song is pretty cool otherwise. There's some hard rock where they'll scream swear words at the end, and it really has no artistic value other than, I guess, maybe they're expressing some kind of negative attitude. But sometimes we'll just edit them and cut them out, and I'll take my chances if they object to that, tribal sovereignty or whatever. I don't think they'll sue me over it. The alternative would be I'd pull the whole song, right? Any questions, comments? So if you're screening music and you don't know if we would do it or not, put a question mark. Don't say it's okay. I'd rather have you say it's not okay. But if you think the song is cool and you think somebody would like to play it but for something, then be sure and call it to my attention so I can take a listen and decide and run it up the chain of command if need be. Okay? That's it on that one then. And I gave you handouts, include page 14 through 17 of the station handbook. An article from Billboard about what you can and can't say on the air. There really wasn't a list. I remember the last time we did this about 3 or 4 years ago, I found a list of like 200-300 words that were no's. I couldn't find it again. But I mean, the FCC doesn't have a list. It's kind of a case-by-case basis. But, I think we all get the gist of it, right? And then there's handouts of our mission statement, so you can see what we're focused on in putting content on the air, and then the health department's vision and mission statement, which might shed some light on why we focus on putting some of the content on the air that we do, especially the short segments. New music, I passed out the directories for May as well. So now we're going to turn it over to Kevin for a warm-up and broadcasting prep tip and voice checks.
Oh, warm-ups. Just pick up the idea of the videotape me, the pen just blew up.
Hold the paper in front
That's what I was going to do, yeah. The ink is free. All right. I guess it's easier to go through this first instead of the warm-up, but we'll talk about it first. Is that some people think that broadcasting involves only the mouth, but it's a good radio depends on like you to me communication, and we communicate best when we use our whole body. So like when I get in the studio in the morning, sometimes I'll stand up and just kind of do the shake it off and kind of You know, it's head side to side. That way you kind of, because like what you say comes across the air. Your personality, your mood. If you're feeling physically or mentally stressed, your voice will show it. If you feel uncomfortable, and what's that message you're projecting to your listener, is that you're feeling uncomfortable. So let's say, Keith, what do you do if you're in a bad mood? And you're going to go on the air. If you're going to, I mean, hypothetically speaking, of course.
Well, there's a lot of good voice exercises you can do to warm up.
Right. Like the Peter Piper picked a peck,
Yeah.
pickled pepper's
Yeah.
my favorite. And little, what is it? You get seashells down by the seashore.
Right.
If you're in a bad mood and you come on and go on the air, what would you do differently to make it sound good?
A little scream therapy.
Yeah.
People.
Paddle balls. Paddle balls, good idea.
Let it out.
Posture in radio presentation is also important. So how do you sit? In short, you sit in a way that makes you breathe comfortable. So it's kind of like, sometimes that thing moves, so you can kick back. It's a little bit too much relaxing, but never sit in the question mark position, like this. And if your body's doubled over, you can't breathe. So in short, just sit in a way that lets you breathe and feel comfortable. Breathing exercise, like he said, are a good supply of breath is actually essential, and we have the benefit of being able to pre-record in the studio. You can record, stop, voice tracking. Old people like some of us, I'm not going to point fingers, but are used to not voice tracking. And it was new to me when I came here too. So, but breathing exercise, a good supply of breath is essential if you want to communicate on radio. But most of us don't make the most of our breathing. We tend to hunch up and breathe only from the upper chest area, and I have some actual handouts for y'all. Let me, that weren't here last Thursday. See, you get my ink spot, aren't you? We call it fat breathing. As explained as just relax and don't worry about, everyone looking at you. Just kind of let it, like Eeyore. Stand up, feet apart, and especially neck and shoulders, kind of rotate a little bit, like you were saying, and nice deep breathing. Place your hands on the bottom pair of your ribs by your navel. So this is a powerhouse of your body. You can also get the butterflies and your nervous down there where you start getting that ooh. So my belly always sticks out. Keep your upper chest and shoulders relaxed. Breathe in the bottom of your chest. That makes it think of as a balloon. Let it expand as you breathe in. You may feel a bit strange, but it still works. Yeah. Then you talk. Take a deep breath and hold it for a couple of seconds. And then gently release it. As you release, you feel the lower chest deflate again like a balloon. So kind of out of your solar plexus or your, that thing. Do this exercise a few more times in your own rhythm. Never force or strain yourself. There should be no movement in your upper body. Here's another important and simple principle. Even if you can't see someone, you can tell immediately from their voice whether they're smiling or not. Try it yourself, and for a friend on radio or telephone, or a smile is equivalent to making eye contact. So when you come on the air, you can hear them smiling. It's also important for another reason. It lifts your voice and makes you sound good and more confident and fresh. And how much should you smile? And should you smile all the time? Experiment, work on it yourself. Listen to your own stuff. But I think we are our own worst critics. So when it comes to doing radio, like, oh, I hated the way they sound. So
warm up, breathe from your diaphragm, and smile. That's what I'm taking from that.
yeah, warm up, breathe your diaphragm, and smile. Project a smile.
Cool.
Come out in smiles per hour.
That's it.